What's going on out there and the masks?
Anyone that's worn the mask for any period of time realizes that they start having symptomologies. And I want to suggest to you, Carrie, and those who are listening, that SARS and COVID is not a disease. It's not a disease. It's a symptomology of something else. It's a symptomology of poor circulation, poor elimination, and poor respiration. Our lungs we have to protect. I mean, they're exposed to air pollution. If we put a mask on our face like this, if we put this mask on, who is this guy? At the same time, it allows then, as I'm breathing out carbon dioxide, I then reintroduce a waste product, which is CO2, carbon dioxide, not into the atmosphere, but I release it into the mask or in that particular environment, which will then lead to me recycling that waste back into my lungs. Any acidic aspects, whether it's from metabolism, whether it's from diet, whether it's from air pollution from the external environment, or whether it's from the reabsorption of carbon dioxide from wearing the mask, will poison the interstitial fluids of the lung, leading to the very thing that we need to prevent. So the mask actually creates more false positive for the symptoms of carbon dioxide poisoning. So if you want to prevent carbon dioxide poisoning, then you have to breathe in oxygen through the nose, release carbon dioxide, which is a waste product of metabolism, out through the lung. And I have a great breathing exercise for people. If you breathe your first breath, it's actually 2 breaths in one. You first breathe in through the nose, and then once you can't take in any more oxygen, you then take a second, not a second breath, but you continue the first breath through the mouth. You hold it for 3 seconds, and then you release the carbon dioxide. Now, you cannot do breathing exercises with a mask on, because all you'll be doing is reabsorbing your own waste, poisoning the fluids of the body, which will cause damage to the membranes, okay? And when you damage the membranes, you're going to create an aging process, which is going to lead then to the corona effect. The corona effect is the scalloping of the body cells. In fact, I don't know if you can see this picture or not. Maybe you can see it here in this one.
Yes,
do you see
clear.
Do you see the scalloping of the red blood cell?
Yes.
Okay, that's the corona effect. So red blood cells should be even in color, even in shape, even in size. So why are the cell membranes breaking down? You see? Well, you're reabsorbing your own carbon dioxide because you're not expelling it, because you are wearing the mask. If you're wearing the mask, you are poisoning yourself with carbon dioxide, and it's going back into the lungs, and it's going to go back into the interstitial fluids which goes throughout the entire body, and it can go back into the bloodstream, causing a decrease in the biochemistry, specifically the pH of the interstitial fluids. It'll throw that balance off, so the balance of biochemistry. What the body then does, it tries to neutralize this acid by pulling calcium from the bones, magnesium from the muscles, to neutralize that acid, because we're not expelling that. So the body has to remove its waste products of metabolism. So in every single case where we see respiratory disorders, okay, whether it's interstitial fluid lung disease, it's pneumonia, it's influenza, these are symptoms. They're not diseases. They're symptoms of an underlying cause. And the cause or the genesis of this begins in the interstitial fluids of the body that surround every cell, including the lung cells of the body. So these fluids surround our liver cells, our heart cells, our pancreas cells, our liver cells, every cell, and of course the lung cells. And if that chemistry becomes depleted in bicarbonates, okay, bicarbonates of sodium, bicarbonates of potassium. The body uses that to neutralize these acids. It becomes reduced, which we're finding reduced bicarbonate levels in the interstitial fluids. And also, if in extreme severe case, like SARS, it's also showing up in the blood plasma, the intravascular fluids. When this happens, this is when you risk premature death. And it can happen within 3 to 4 minutes. So the underlying causes, because you asked me this question, what are the underlying causes to Ebola, to HIV? Especially when we have an invisible or not identified, using the gold standard for identification of any bacterium, any yeast, viruses are nothing more than acidic waste products. It's the venom from the snake. It's the lactic acid from overexercise. We all know what that feels like. It feels like pain. Inflammation is not a disease. It's a symptom, and the body reacts to that. And the way it reacts to it is it then releases nascent oxygen from the T cells. It releases calcium ions, magnesium ions from the bones and the muscles. And people say, well, why am I the incredible shrinking person as I get older? But one of the most beautiful scientific examinations that was published in 2016 on the importance of the bicarbonates, of which I've been evaluating now close to 40 years. We measure these, not only just in the blood, and we pay attention to them in the blood, because that's even more serious. We're actually measuring the interstitial fluid chemistry of calcium ions, potassium ions, sodium ions, the electrolytes in the interstitium, because that's 80% of the extracellular body fluids. Blood is only 20%. So when we have 100% of the picture, we don't run the risk of a false positive and false negative. We're not testing for antibodies. We're actually testing for the cause. Antibodies are a reaction to an antigen, to an acid, to a waste product. It's not a good test. In fact, you're either false negative or false positive because it means nothing. The antibody tests that they're doing, they mean nothing because they're not specific to the actual underlying cause. So what causes muscle inflammation? Lactic acid. What causes gout? Uric acid. What causes cancer? Glyphosate, citric acid. These are specific wastes. They're chemical wastes. And when we get into the part, well, what about the biologicals, and using RT-PCR testing, which was developed by Gary Mullis, who received a Nobel Prize, out of his own mouth, he says, what are you people doing? Are you crazy? You can't identify anything by testing antibodies. It identifies nothing. You could have had an argument with your spouse and increased excess antibodies from stress. You could have had a vaccine and increased antibodies that are associated with the chemicals like aluminum oxide, like formaldehyde, like thimerosal. This can increase antibodies. Antibodies are released by lymphocytes to neutralize acidic waste. So the question is, what is it releasing it for? So what we have is a fairy tale, a made-up story about a non-existent phantom virus. And they're all phantom, and they're all non-existent, including HIV. There's no gold standard that's showing the efficacy or the underlying cause of any viral so-called infection. Now, I'd like to introduce just one more concept to those who are listening, because the reason I understand what I understand is because I've been looking at the most important organ of the human body for the last 40 years, and that is the blood. But then I learned through Dr. Galina Magalko and her research and her studies that she was testing not just blood like I was testing, looking at blood, we started testing, this happened like 10 years ago, the largest body of water that makes up, which is called the interstitium, which was just accepted just last, year and a half ago, 2 years, as even the existence of this new organ that was discovered that I had learned from Dr. Marie Blecker at the Interland Institute of what is called in German the colloidal connective tissue of the Schad. It's an organ that actually contains all of our body fluids. I mean, so we've got 3 very important fluids that need to be tested, and we're only testing 10% of all of the body fluids, and then we're basing our prognosis, our diagnosis, on 10% of the information. And this is why in every single case, Carrie, there isn't a single case, and I'm talking hundreds of thousands of people over many, many years. We are finding false positives and false negatives. We're finding the underlying causes of these symptomologies. There is no logical reason for wearing a mask so that you can absorb your own carbon dioxide unless the bad actors have something else in mind. In other words, you're going to get sick. You're going to get sicker by wearing a mask, not healthier, because when you're sneezing or coughing, here again, yeah, you should cover your mouth. That's only common sense. You should wash your hands. But whatever is in the air can only contribute to a state of imbalance. It cannot cause any specific disease. I'm going to say that one more time. When you sneeze or cough, if someone is in the room and they actually breathe that in, whatever they're breathing in cannot cause any specific disease, because there are no specific diseases. There's only specific disease symptomologies, but it can only contribute to a state of imbalance. If you breathe something in, the body's going to, what happens to me when I'm on a plane and we're going international, they literally spray on us, antibacterial type compounds or chemicals into the line. They put that in. I know exactly when they do it, because as soon as they do it, I start sneezing. If I eat too much sugar, I start sneezing. Why? Because it's a poison. If I'm breathing in something from the air, I will sneeze, I will cough. That is normal. You don't want to be wearing a mask, coughing or sneezing. Well, true, maybe you need to isolate yourself or be aware that these are contributing factors, but not for a condition such as SARS, because other factors have to be involved here, and so it's a contributing factor. So if you're eating beef, chicken, pork, and fish, if you're having high concentrations of sugar in your diet, if you're exposed to air pollution, if you're exposed to electromagnetic frequencies, these are all contributing factors that cause an imbalance in the internal fluids of the body, because we are a body of water. And the cleanliness of that water is determined by what you eat, what you drink, what you breathe, what you think, what you feel, and what you believe, how you live. If you're living in a soup of environmental pollution, coupled with electromagnetic pollution, coupled with noise pollution, coupled with carbon monoxide pollution, carbon dioxide pollution from wearing the mask, I'm survived that anybody survives. But as far as a pandemic for reducing population or making more of us sick to get on the disease type mentality, not really focusing on the internal environment as an internal environmentalist and looking at interstitial fluids, looking at blood, and helping people understand, hey, guess what? You know what air pollution looks like, Carrie. You know what air pollution looks like, right? You know what water pollution looks like. You know what stagnant water looks like. Have you ever seen your blood? Have you ever seen the pollution? 99% of the people walking on the planet have some level of pathological blood coagulation. So if you add additional factors like vaccination, which only proves that you can poison somebody, with chemicals and biologicals, and pollute more of the already polluted environment and have a reaction to that. This is what happens in sudden infant death syndrome. It's a classic example of internal blood pollution. If you looked at a baby's blood before vaccination, and if you looked at the baby's blood after vaccination, you would understand perfectly what I'm talking about. You just poisoned this child. You just polluted the internal environment. You just compromised the pH of the vascular system and the interstitial fluids of the interstitium organ, the largest organ of the human body. It's not the skin, folks. It's the interstitium. You've just activated another system called the alkaline buffering system, the main organ being the stomach, to begin immediately producing sodium bicarbonate. And if you can't produce these bicarbonates, which the stomach does, its main purpose is to produce bicarbonates for the food you eat, to neutralize the acids, and to maintain the integrity of the blood and the interstitium. The stomach is the major contributing organ of sodium bicarbonate, potassium bicarbonate, and it's produced in the lining of the stomach. The waste product of this is hydrochloric acid, which is a waste product that falls in the gastric pits. There is literally, Carrie, no digestion that takes place. There is so much wrong with medical science, so much wrong in the interpretation. So we're actually calling diseases, which are in reality symptoms, and as we peel the onion back, we then get down to the foundation. And what took me there is the work of Dr. Galina Magalko and the non-invasive medical diagnosis, false positives and false negatives, and literally allow a patient to see what is really going on. And that's the problem. Everyone in the world that's practicing medicine, and I emphasize practicing, is not looking at the underlying cause of disease.